Welcome back. You're in the newsroom at Bloomberg TV India. Global business optimism has clearly improved in third quarter of this year. At least that's according to the latest Grant Thornton International Business Report. My colleague Abha had a chance to speak to Munesh Khanna. He's partner at Grant Thornton, and she discussed their findings of their report. Here's an excerpt of that conversation.
Clearly, in the last quarter, the kind of efforts that the government has made and what is happening within the economy, there is an improved sentiment. There's no question about it. Our IBR, our International Business Report that we do, and also our India Ahead report, both of them, when we have spoken across segment, across industries, with people within the industries, with professionals, by and large, the message is the same. The level of optimism in India, which may not be necessarily true for the rest of the world, has definitely improved.
Okay. So what are, some of the factors that are causing that? Is it simply, for instance, the government's recent reforms push? Is it any kind of commentary coming in from the RBI? Because, they have indicated that maybe in the next few months they might, of course, go ahead and cut rates. In the meantime, they have cut CRR. Is there expectation of some further liquidity due to that? What's causing this sudden change in sentiment?
I think clearly the change in sentiment, I think all along the view that has been held was that there is nothing intrinsically wrong with the Indian economy, although there may have problems in the US, Europe is under pressure, but clearly there is nothing fundamentally wrong with the Indian economy. What was ailing the Indian economy was really the lack of governance and policies and procedures which were investor friendly, which were industry friendly, and we are not really talking about only foreign investment coming in, but even the domestic industry. And that sadly was missing for the better part of the current calendar year, and compounded was with whether the issues like GAR, retrospective taxation. Clearly that was holding people back from making decisions. Policy implementation was an issue. Really, from a fiscal perspective, the government had come to a standstill. What we've seen in the last couple of months clearly is a more determined government, whether they had initially been bogged down by the opposition, but clearly there was a more sense of purpose out there. A new finance minister coming in, and he quickly taking certain steps. For example, a call on GAR, what we are going to do on that. The retrospective amendment on taxation being looked at a little more realistically.
Okay. But on ground, Munesh, how soon do you think we'll actually start to see the impact of this when it comes to growth? Because even, the governor talking to us in an interview specifically said that the only reason they're playing it safe is because they're waiting for some of these policy announcements to really translate into action.
No, clearly there is a lot of work to be done on the ground, and I think one is, and I think what we've covered is an affirmation of the intent that the government does wish to act. We've got certain broad policies coming in, but the next step really is in the implementation and the success of, are we going to hit 6% growth rate GDP? Are we going to hit 7%, 7.5%? Are we going to go near that? Will be how good are we at implementations? And these are there are things like Colgate. There is so much of money which has gone into the power sector. Will coal be available for them? Because as and when these things start getting specified, we will find the Indian businessmen willing to take higher risks, putting in more money, and also the banking sector will come across. So I think we've crossed the hurdle of what is the intent of the government, what is the of the policymakers, and now we are on the implementation.
So I do see, a note in that report which says that there's an expectation that wages will also go up over the next year. Just run us through really how one has arrived at that conclusion. Is that because we're so optimistic that companies will start to see that uptick in growth?
I think yes. Two is yes. We can talk. Really, the pressure on the wages comes in on increases when people start hiring more. Because there are two things in the report. If you look at it, one is that one of the things that India, in spite of our population and in spite of our educated youth, really suffers from is experienced management
Yeah.
personnel. So there is a constraint on that. We do not have enough good people, effectively trained people to work. So the moment growth comes in terms of industry, moment more capacities are set up, new businesses are set up, there will be a pressure on the existing people, and consequently there will be an impact on the wages.
Okay, so finally, Munesh, just fit us into the global picture right now. I mean, on one hand, we do continue to be vulnerable somewhat to you know, the kind of growth conditions we're seeing in some of the major markets. Certain sectors in particular, of course, are vulnerable to that. But that apart, if we, you know, how much can we say are we sort of immune to what's happening in the rest of the world, that we're continuing on our own trajectory and that we're really standing out? Because there were several questions raised about that, not, you know, just a few months ago.
I think clearly we are not immune to what is happening in the rest of the world. We are not isolated. We are an integral part of the world economy. And therefore, what happens in the rest of the world will impact us. But I think the question is that how much of an impact does it have on us?
Exactly.
The Indian economy has been largely a domestic consumption economy. There are things that we don't have, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's basic necessities. So there is a lot of demand for that. Now, what does happen is, because of the pressure that we see in Europe and to some extent in US, I mean, I'm very optimistic about the US, and I think the US economy will continue to surprise everyone and will bounce back first. So what I think happens is that the propensity of those companies, those businesses out there to invest in India, to set up new facilities, does impact the growth. So there will be a marginal growth.
That's my colleague Abha in conversation with Munesh Khanna of Grant Thornton and their report. So with that, it's going to be a wrap of this edition of Newsroom. I'm Vikram Oza from me and the team. Good evening.